Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about Tinker tokens. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. I didn't know what it was until earlier this morning. But before we get into that, a couple of little updates. First off, Andy was supposed to come onto the show today to have a discussion. I was looking forward to it, but he had to reschedule. So he will be on the show on the 19th, which is in about 2 weeks from now. So we'll have him on top of which I have a couple of other folks scheduled that week. So that week's going to be interview week. I'm going to be having actually 3 interviews that week with different people. So very excited for that. Additionally, other things that have happened is that Converge, which was the conference that I spoke at about a month ago, the videos are out from Converge, all publicly available. So you can find that, I'm sure, at Converge's site, converge.zeroheight.com. You can see the links there. I actually updated my site with the my video, but then I realized that I don't really have a good way of linking to the video on the site if it's not YouTube, because they're using their own platform. So I need to make some adjustments on my site to make that a little bit better, which I'll probably do at some point this weekend once I find some free time, which has been really hard to do, admittedly. I have a lot of other things that I need to be dealing with. In fact, one of the things is that I'm faculty at FIT very recently, where I have to still onboard into their whole system because I'm supposed to teach next semester, and I'm really not ready for it right yet. So I need to do a whole bunch of work to try to get that all set up. But all that being said, lots of busy stuff that I'm, of course, going on, trying to maintain. But I do want to talk about this thing, Tinker Token, which was shown to me literally this morning by a person in our community named Owner. He sent it to me in the Design System Slack, and he was like, hey, really value opinion. What do you think of this thing? And I did give him what I'm probably going to do is the same feedback that I'm going to give here live about his work. But as I understand it, the application that he's made is all about naming tokens. Now, as soon as you hear that and you know me, you know that I have a very specific idea about how to name tokens. And anything that deviates from that, I'm immediately going to have some criticism about all the time, right? But before we get started, my setup decided that it wanted to work today, so we can even actually see my friend over here, the AI, is up and here. So why don't we ask AI about how they name tokens? What do they think about it? So let's see here. We're gonna do this. Okay. And so when we're talking about naming tokens, what kinds of things are you keeping into consideration? Are you speaking? Or you're thinking? As it's thinking.
It's here. Easier to understand and use. Scalability. Choose a name that can grow with the token, as your token is likely to evolve over time. Make sure that your name can accommodate these changes.
Okay, maybe my setup wasn't doing so well. Literally, we're going to cross something off our list, apparently. Um, anyway, let's just move on from there. I also realized that I muted the computer there, so you probably didn't hear that either, but it sounded like the person or the AI was like running really slowly. So let's just avoid that right now. Hopefully, with my new setup that I'll be setting up actually next week, this will all be cleared up. But because like I mentioned last week, it's kind of a wrong setup here. But anyway, let's actually talk about Tinker Token. So Tinker Token was again made by this guy named Owner, and we're gonna go over to the computer to take a peek and see what it's all about. Let's bring it up here. So this is Tinker Token. This is available at tinkertoken.com, and it looks really cool. Um, I really like the visual design of this a lot in terms of the some of the visual choices here, especially this right here. So this has this like dotted line around here that makes it look like it's a cutout, and you have the scissors here, and the scissors is actually a button that allows you to copy what's in here. I think this treatment, I'm going to steal this treatment. I'm just going to let you know right now, Owner, this is a great treatment. If I have to copy something in a UI, I'm doing this. This is great. But a couple of buttons here, you can see the delimiters you could change for this over here. You could share this. Apparently, you could refresh this in some way, right? You have different kinds of token structures. You have a generic one, apparently, a specific one, and of course, a semantic over here. And if you click these things here, they actually scroll you down to how this is constructed. So you can actually change this to, I don't know, something like danger if you wanted, which, I don't necessarily recommend danger as a thing. Actually, critical is more like it. But you can select from existing presets, so you can even call this accent if you wanted. It's already immediately in there, right? You could add ones. You could say we're going to add scale in there and add scale. So this is a really nice looking interface, okay? And if you want to see the about here, this is from Owner. That's how you spell his name. And there's some coming soon to reorder nodes, which is important. It's actually an important part of this that I spoke to him about, and he reassured me about this thing here. But here's what I need to say about these kinds of applications, okay, these kinds of experiences. All right, like I said, and I said this to Owner as well. I said this is a beautiful designed app, or visually beautiful app. I think it was really thoughtful in terms of the way that you convey things in here. I think just overall on the surface is great. The thing is that when it comes to naming, I have a very specific structure in mind. I mean, that's what the Mise en Mode book is also completely based on foundationally, is this structure of purpose, priority, and property, right? Purpose, priority, property. All of the tokens are built that way, with some caveats with like the control system. But ultimately, it's important for my structure to always be in that kind of setup, right? All those segments are meant in that way. In here, right, you have, let's go back to the example here. For semantic, right, I know I did just add scale, but his is property, variant, and then state or scale or whatever, right? I think we could remove this. Can we remove this? Let's see. I don't even know. Let's go down. Okay, I think we can remove it here, right? Great. So this, and he said you could reorder properties, eventually, but ultimately, I mean, if this thing here doesn't match up with my mental model, then I don't want to use it. Right? Plain and simple. If it doesn't match up with the model of what my tokens are, this is not helpful for me as a person who's trying to um, name tokens. Okay. Additionally, I can only really see the benefit of this. Again, not thinking of me knowing exactly what my token structure is, but I only see really the benefit of this from a standpoint of you trying to figure out what your token naming schema is supposed to be, right? If you have lots of different possibilities down here and you want to see what the best kind of ordering of those things are, I think this could be helpful. I think a really good feature of this moving forward is let me add all of the kinds of things that could appear in these sections, right? So going back to the computer here, what can appear here? Well, border color can appear here, or background color can appear here, or foreground color. All of the ones that I, of course, input, right? Then what the system could do is export all the permutations. So I know about what all of my tokens would be with all these permutations. Okay? And I think that from a visual standpoint or I should say more of a categorical standpoint or organizational standpoint of seeing all of the tokens that would be created from these segments, I think would be really valuable, because then you could really see about, okay, I need to have a value for every single one of these tokens that I'm effectively creating excuse me, from all these different permutations, right? I'm gonna need border color, background color, foreground color for box, for primary, I'm sorry, for box, for action, for what's the other ones that I have? Text. Right? You're gonna need all those things and all the permutations. You could visualize it, right? If you wanted to put in interactions in that, right, that's going to increase the number of tokens that you're going to need to curate, right? And this could visualize the amount of tokens you'll need, because it is composing your tokens. That's what's happening here. Now, another thing that's in here is the generic semantic specific, right? These things over here. I think, again, the design of this is really cool about, changing the kind of composition that the token is going to be. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, we can get into the whole naming of what these things are supposed to be. Doesn't really matter too much, right? What I talk about is I talk about primitive, semantic, and then component. That's the way that I design it. It's fine, whatever. But I do like that part of it, where you can actually, we do typically have 3 tiers. If you have more than 3 tiers, it's a little questionable why you would have so many tiers. But ultimately, we talk about our token systems in 3-tiered systems, right? So having separate constructions of these segments, I think, is very important, right? Because it is clear that for primitive tokens, the construction is definitely different, because there's not necessarily a purpose to those things, right? It's a scale in general instead. Then you have semantic, which of course is not supposed to have a scale, but people put one in there anyway. And then component, right, is, in my view, obviously a little bit similar to semantic, because we're just being more specific in the meaning of why this token exists. So it's almost like these things should have like at least semantic and specific should like inherit a little bit, where it's the same construction, just different kinds of things that are being put into that construction. But yeah, I think, again, just overall, when you're making something that's meant to help with the token naming exercise, right? Something to consider is the flexibility that's unfortunately out there, right? There's a lot of different opinions about what token naming is supposed to be. In fact, I mean, let's go to Nathan Curtis, because he's got a classic blog post about token naming tokens in design systems from 5 years ago. Wow, I thought it was longer than that. So this looks different. Maybe it's a different one. No, this is it. This is what I'm looking for. Please don't need this. Um, okay. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So basically, in his article, which I thought was older than 2020, but I guess not. Here it is. Here. Um, you could see that there's lots of different kind of breakdowns here. You have a namespace, an object, a base modifier that he's describing here, and then each one of those things have system, theme, domain, group, component, element, category, concept, property, variant, state, scale, mode, right? And then what these things could potentially exist in. This is, I think, Morningstar's stuff over here, something he worked on. But you could see the way that a couple of different systems have broken down their tokens, okay? And there's something to actually really pay attention to in here because he isn't breaking these things down as primitive, semantic, and component, or in the way that Tinker Token is doing it as generic, semantic, specific, or is it the other way around? Whatever. But he's not breaking them down here. Okay. What's happening in here is that these are, it seems like, primary action hover color. Right, that's actually what it says on the bottom. This is how they say primary action hover color. And color action is not really very descriptive, right? In terms of looking at it, because it's the background color, is the foreground color. Which one is that, right? What action is it? It's not. Is it primary? I mean, it says it's primary on the bottom, but how do I know it's primary? Just as action color. You could be lots of different. Do you only use one action in the entire interface? I don't. I hope not. But ultimately, the ways that these things are constructed, some of these things are component, and some of these things are semantic because they're more generic. Okay. So it's all different stuff in here. Let's go down a little bit here. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at. So they have categories that he's identified. There's properties that he's been identified here. Concept, and I think eventually there's a lot in this post, and I highly recommend that you read it in the event that you're interested in getting into token naming. But I don't want people to be confused or overwhelmed by this. There's a lot here. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's something that I could have swore there was like a table that talks about all the different systems. Excuse me as I scroll. Okay, I guess we're at the end. I was looking for a table that was like talking about the other systems, but I guess not. All right, I'm going to leave that alone. What am I getting at? So there is a lot here in this blog post that talks about how other people have named things. And me personally, as you know, I have a lot of opinions about naming stuff. But me personally, I don't enjoy looking at other people's stuff about the way that people name things because I don't know what their thought process was when they were naming this stuff, right? They could be creating these things because they feel like they need it, right? And that's valid enough for them. Many folks have not taken the time to really sit down and think about what a scalable token naming convention could be. Okay, because if you just keep throwing tokens into, your pile, you're going to get a very difficult to maintain mess, frankly speaking. That's why I've spent so much time with Mizon mode and specifically its token naming structure, that it is flexible and it has structure to it and understanding behind why each piece is the way that it's done, right? For the folks that have actually read the book already, because I've had a couple of folks and trusted readers, one of the biggest pieces of positive feedback that I've gotten from the book was the way that I'm explaining each piece, right? Every single decision that I talk about in Mizon mode has the research to back it up, the reason why it's there to back it up. It's never a matter of, oh, I feel it should be this or I feel it should be that. This is all a matter of the intention of the user and how we express ourselves in our UI. Okay? So it's not a matter of, ESDS marquee space inset 2x media query S. Good Lord. Good Lord. right? I don't even know what to say about that token, right? I mean, let me. This is what I'm looking at, all right, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. I just turned around and I saw this token over here, okay, and I'm immediately like, what is happening? What do I even do with that, right? What does this even mean? Okay, let me see if I figure out what this actually means. Okay, so ESDS is obviously the namespace to make sure that we're not using something else from another system. Okay, so we know that it's an ESDS system. Marquee, I don't know what the hell a marquee is in this context, right? Is it a component, maybe? Hopefully, possibly, I guess. I don't know. Maybe marquee is in a component. Space inset. Okay, so space inset is supposed to be the space inset, really the padding that's around this component. So it's going to be the padding around the marquee. Okay. We got 2x. So it's, I guess, 2x times the base of the spacing scale. Okay. And then finally we have media query S, which is like at the smallest media query. Which does that mean that you need to define medium and large and stuff like that? Here's the thing. Okay. Again, in the system, and I'm biased, let's be clear. I don't think we need to be as specific as that. I think trying to go ahead and attach a value to that for lots of different expressions is going to be really hard. Even if you're not doing expressions, I think it's really hard to assign a value to that and then also to even use that token where it's supposed to be used, especially in a reuse kind of scenario. What I would recommend instead is, sure, put the namespace on it, that's fine, right? But instead of it being specifically for the marquee, why does it have to be specifically for the marquee? I'm sure there's other things that are marquee-like cards and other stuff like that, that have the same spacing. So why not just say that, right? Why would we use the word space inset when we do have padding and many, many people understand what padding means? I would just use the word padding, right? So now what we have is something more generic. We have the namespace, fine, whatever. We have a more generic way that we're going to apply this space, which is going to be, you know, at these, I don't know, cards or even surfaces, whatever. You know, I use surface, but you could be more a little bit more specific if you want. But I think marquee is too specific. Then you have padding, right? So you know what we're dealing with here. You could and when I say padding in my system, I never say it all around. I never say it in like different orientations. I don't say padding left or padding right, even padding inline starter or end. I actually do say in my system padding is the whole way around. Generally speaking, from the experience that I've had, all you need is padding and gap to basically do whatever you need to do when it comes to spacing stuff around edges of stuff. If you're doing individual edges, there's probably another way that you should be doing it. Just a little bit of a smell. Now going right along over here, you have 2x, which is trying to say how big this padding is. If you've known about complementary space or read it, I don't agree with that necessarily because I think the context could say how big the spacing's supposed to be just by where it is, right? So you don't even need to explain that part. And then media query S, no. I need to, I know that I need to make a video or show specifically talking about media queries, most likely. But my hottest take there is that I avoid media queries like the plague. Right now, granted, this is 2020, right? Continuous queries aren't around yet, so we have to go ahead and deal with things with media queries and things like that when we need to try to make changes and stuff. But admittedly, in this token, media query S, does that mean this token is meant to exist underneath a media query? Or does that mean that the value changes when it hits a certain media query? I don't know, right? That part in there is ambiguous. I don't know if I'm responsible for setting that under a media query or the value is responsible for it changing under a media query. I don't know. Not clear. I don't believe that we really need media queries. Again, hottest take. Talk about another video. But ultimately, I really think that this can go down, especially in my system, to something that says something to the effect of surface. Is it just surface padding? Yeah, that's it. This would be called surface padding, maybe with a namespace in front. That's it. And again, if you're wondering how something that ends up being so specific here can be so general here, especially when it comes to space, you should actually look at complementary space that I wrote several years ago. In fact, I actually had Nathan read complementary space when I first made it, just so that I can align on his spacing concepts. Right, it was very important to me because everyone followed what he was doing with spacing and having t-shirt sizing and stuff like that. That I wanted mine to have the same output, even if it was a different approach. So anyway, a little bit of a tangent there, but really when it comes to naming, right, walking this back a little bit, is that there's lots of ways of naming, right, as Nathan points out in his article, and you can adopt any one of those things to create your own naming structure, and many people already have. It's the end of the year 2025, right? If you are in design systems, you probably already have an opinion about what the naming's supposed to be. So this is what's hard about something like Tinker Token here, right? As a tool, because many people have already formed opinions about this stuff, right? So, like I said to owner, and I've said earlier here, I think there's ways of improving this where obviously having more customization about where, the token structure is, right? So he's already working on that part. But I think the real cool thing in here is visualizing after you do all this work of figuring out, the different kinds of permutations, that might appear, to actually visualize those permutations, right? So list all the tokens that would appear based on your inputs here so that you could see how much of an undertaking it's going to be to provide all values to the tokens based on the structure that you just made, right? I think there's a huge amount of value in there, past just tinkering, which is what the site is, tinkering with the naming. I think there's going to be a lot more value in that as opposed to, again, playing the naming part. But you know what? Maybe I'm wrong, right? Again, me being very opinionated and being in this space for a really long time and thinking about, these things really deeply, maybe there's people out there that are just looking to play around to get, the right naming scheme. Onur said that he says that this is useful to him and his team to figure out token naming. And admittedly, I didn't have an opportunity, and maybe I can get him on the show to ask him what that dialogue looks like, right? How would he and his team use this to figure out the naming convention, right? Because again, it looks a little bit strict right now. I'm wondering how it could be used to address other people's opinions about what the naming convention could be. Right? I think there's some improvement there, of course. But let me know what you think. Right down in the comments below there, or of course, as usual, you can absolutely find us in the Discord. Right down there. Boom. Discord.ds.house. I will most likely put a link to this thing, if it isn't already there by the time you're reading this, for a discussion, as well as I think there's even a LinkedIn post that he posted that I'm going to put this video in as a response, so that people understand, what not people understand, but people get my take, right? Which is actually, admittedly, what owner initially asked for, was like, hey, could you comment on the thing? I said, no, let's go ahead and make a wireframe episode, because I actually don't have the topic for today, since the interview went out. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, this would be a great time. This would be a great time before you leave, to go ahead and smash the like and subscribe button to make sure you get information and notified about the next live show that appears here on the Wireframe site. And I need to get this outro down. I have it on a piece of paper here. Here it is. Here, I'll read it off the piece of paper. We're doing it live here. Okay, here we go. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, help us out by smashing that like and subscribe button to get notified the next time that we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on Discord down there, right? Yeah, The official Discord. I put a little carrot in here. Play nice in the comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye. We'll get this right, I promise. Here we go. I swear we're going to get this right one of these days. I mean, when I get this set up, it's going to be much better. It'll be great.